Thank you.
Thank you, Bodhi. Oh, anybody else feel like what Bodhi mentioned at the beginning? Like sometimes we just feel too much? Whew. I've been feeling that for more than just a couple weeks now. Anybody else feeling that? So I wanted to talk about this idea of too much and how do we feel love? Like, how many people in here have felt that cry within them? I just want to feel the love of God, of myself, of others, and we feel as if there's some sort of obstacle to that. So, I want to share a story with you. When I was in my graduate program, my MFA program, I had this dream. And part of what that program was doing was taking me apart, right? I mean, I'm trying to imagine getting up in front of people every single day and doing a monologue or doing a scene and then having all of your cohorts and your teachers telling you what you did wrong over and over and over again, right? For 3 years. So there gets to be a place where there's no illusions about what your strengths are, there's no illusions about what your weaknesses are, right? You have to find a way to sort of navigate all of that. And one of the things that I was experiencing was people kept telling me that I wasn't emotionally connected enough. That the emotion that they were feeling wasn't like real. It was like the idea of the emotion rather than the real emotion. Anybody in here relate to that? So I had this dream. It was crazy. Because, of course, I mean, you know enough about me to know that if somebody gives me a place where I can see is my leading edge, I'm going to just throw myself off that cliff, right? And I did. I just threw myself off that cliff. And the dream that I had was that I walked into this giant cavern. And the cavern went on forever. There was no end to it. And there was no end to the height of it. And there was just cavern upon cavern upon cavern. And filling the cavern were shelves of canned jam. Just everywhere. Just all the way up, like beyond what I could see. And in my dream, I took out a machine gun. It's a dream. Stay with me, folks. And I mowed down all of the jars. And I was standing in a sea, because it's a dream, so there was no glass. I was standing in a sea of jam. And what I realized as I came out of that very interesting dream, as you can imagine, was that those were my emotions. That what I had been doing my whole life was processing them, managing them, fitting them into little canisters that I could stick a label on, and storing them. And as I machine gunned everything open, all of a sudden, what became available to me was the full strength and might of my emotional life. It felt like that, right? I felt like all of a sudden I had let loose a tsunami because everything had been stored away and neatly shelved and everything had been put in its place. And all of a sudden I was opening myself up to the fullness of what I was actually feeling and experiencing. And what I realized in that moment was that what I was so afraid of, why I had done all that cooking and processing and literally cooking things down, was because I was afraid of being overwhelmed by loss and pain and grief. But what I also realized is that I wasn't just cooking up the loss and the pain and the grief. I was cooking up everything. I was cooking up the love, and I was canning that and labeling that. I had placed my heart in a place, there's the cavern, where it would quote unquote be safe. But I actually wasn't safe. I was actually missing out on so much because my fear was creating this obstacle to my being able to experience everything. I was so afraid of one aspect of my emotional life that I was cutting myself off from everything. The other image that came to me was that I had built a giant dam, and all of my emotions, water emotions, right, lived on one side of the dam. And I would open it up every once in a while in controlled release so that it wouldn't overflow. Can anybody in here relate to this? And all it would take is one giant wave, and the whole thing was just a mess. It was out of control. Overwhelmed by loss, pain, and grief. And the whole thing that I realized is that in all my attempts to control my emotions, to can them, to store them, to label them, to categorize them, can you feel how human that is? Can you feel how anchored that is in our human understanding? Our desire to know and to manage and to make it fit into some sort of meaning, to make it make sense in some way. All the narratives that we tell ourselves. And no matter what I did, that's how I felt. Even with everything canned, even with the dam in place, that is how I still felt. That at any moment, I could be overwhelmed by it all anyway. So all those mechanisms, can you feel how much energy they were taking within me? All those mechanisms weren't even working. They weren't even working because I still didn't feel safe from grief or loss or pain. Because you know what? We are never going to be safe from experiencing those things in time and in space. Everybody just breathe into that with me. I wish there was a magic wand that we could wave over our heads and be like, click our heels together, no more pain, no more loss, no more grief. But that isn't what we're here for. We may not know exactly what we're here for, because that's one of the great mysteries, but I can guarantee you it is not to do a spiritual bypass. It is not to avoid those hard places. That much I do know. We would love the waters to always be calm. We would love for the waters to always be ease and grace, and yet those waves are going to come. We wouldn't be living here now if the waves weren't coming. So what do we have? What do we have to support us in this? And it's truly the power of our heart, the power of our emotions, the power for them to be a guidance system that allows us to understand what do we need to heal, what do we need to step into and own and acknowledge in a different way. What is it that we are being invited to understand about ourselves and about the world and about what love truly is? The essence of love is not about everything going our way. The essence of love is people not showing up exactly the way we wish they would. Ask my wife, she can tell you. The essence of love is something larger than that. And it is our spiritual principles that give us an anchor, that allow us to let the tsunami come. Let it come. I remember when I finally, it's a lot of work, and I'm not going to lie, it wasn't the easiest of work to do on myself. But I got to a point where, at one point the image that kept coming to me was, you know how when you get into really rough surf and you get thrown off balance and you kind of get tumbled around by the waves, and it's really hard to like find your feet again. That's what my life felt like. That was what I felt like all the time. And the instinct was to try to create a barrier between me and the waves. And I kept saying, what else is here for me to know? What capacity do I have that I'm not accessing because I keep running away? I keep trying to make myself safe. And all of a sudden, it was prayer, it was meditation, it was understanding the wholeness that I actually am. It didn't come in a moment, and yet it did. You know what I mean? I'm doing the work, I'm doing the practice, I'm looking within, I'm looking without, and then whoosh, all of a sudden, I could feel the waves breaking over me, and I was just standing. I was just standing in the truth that I knew, in the principles that I believed in, and I could not be moved. I could be with what was arising and falling and flowing and coming and going, but I was rock solid. Now, do I still get knocked off center? Absolutely. But I know where center is. I know where it is now. I have an embodied experience of what it means to stand. The choir sings that song. Clay sings that song so beautifully, right? When all you can do is just stand. Our principles give us the capacity to be that. The courage to feel, and I really want to be clear that this isn't just feeling for ourselves. I found this quote by Bell Hooks, which I loved. I am often struck by the dangerous narcissism fostered by spiritual rhetoric that pays so much attention to individual self-improvement and so little to the practice of love within the context of community. I'm going to read that again. I am often struck by the dangerous narcissism fostered by spiritual rhetoric that pays so much attention to individual self-improvement and so little to the practice of love within the context of community. When I first was trying to explain New Thought to my stepmother, she looked at me and she said, "How selfish." And I heard her, but I knew that I am in it for the bigger context. So I was able to answer that. I was able to say, I understand why you think that's selfish. And I am able to show up as more love within my community. I'm able to be more in service to my community. And let me be very clear, my community is the global community, right? I love you all, but we are so much bigger. We are so much bigger than that. Spiritual community creates very special agreements where we are saying, it's okay. It's okay if you don't know what you're doing all the time. It's okay if you're kind of messy. Anybody in here ever feel messy? It's okay if your behavior isn't always in alignment with the truth of your being. Anybody experience that? When we come together in spiritual community, we're saying, we're going to love you. We may gently and lovingly point out something to you. The invitation is for you to gently and lovingly notice it yourself, right? And then we make amends. We don't hold on to things. We understand that we're all here to evolve and grow. Are we all here to evolve and grow? Is anybody in here perfect? Is anybody in here already walking on water? Okay, just checking, yeah, right? We are in this process. And it means that we have to show up for each other. So yes, the images that we see on the news, the unhoused person that we might walk past on the street, we cannot shut ourselves off from them. They are not separate from us. Their pain is not just their pain, it is also our pain. And if we have the courage to feel it, really feel it, then it will also inform us about how we are called to show up in the world to truly be a loving presence, so that this teaching isn't just for me, but that it's actually something that is impacting the entire world. Amen. So those waves that come, what if it looks more like this? Remember me standing all by myself with the tsunami coming at me? That was never true. I mean, breathe that with me. It was never true. I was never all alone in the tsunami of my own emotional life. There was always community. Always community. And yes, sometimes our communities need to shift and evolve, because sometimes our community reinforces that we're all alone in the world. But that's why we come together here, to be reminded. And that those waves, do you see how they're having fun? Because that's kind of the goal. And we can hold that for each other. We can hold that consciousness for each other, that the waves that we're all navigating, that there is joy underneath it all. There is life underneath it all. There is love underneath all of it. So don't put your heart in a cavern. Don't cover up, because it's not going to work anyway. Is anybody in here actually feeling like their heart isn't experiencing pain? Even if we've got it covered up in 1,000 layers of wool, I'm not going to let it touch me. Stop pretending. Let's just stop pretending. Let's make that agreement. Now, we're not going to pretend anymore. Now, we're going to be honest, because as Cindy so beautifully read, on the other side of all that emotion that we're so afraid of are also the emotions that we are desperate to experience. You can't selectively just cut yourself off from the pain. If you're cutting yourself off, you're cutting yourself off. The courage to feel. When we are doing that within principle, within spiritual community, can you feel see those waves? It doesn't matter. Our heart is actually going to anchor us. Our truth principles are actually going to anchor us, so that no matter what comes our way, we can hold it all. We can be present with it all. And it will change us. The last thing Cindy said, transformation. We are going to be changed. And I know that can make us uncomfortable, because we like our lives the way they are right now. But if our life is cocooned in a cavern, then we're not really living. We're only experiencing the tiniest piece of what is possible. So let's take this into our time of meditation. That was a lot, yes? Yeah. So we breathe together, because this is sacred Sangha. This is spiritual community. This is a place where we get to come to be held, to be nourished, to be supported, and to hold, and to nourish, and to support. The giving and the receiving of the love. True love, not conditional love. This is what we're allowing ourselves to open into right now. So whatever image comes to your mind, whether it's canned jam, or whether it's a dam or a wall or a cavern in the dark, come out wherever you are. The water's fine. And once that initial deluge of everything you've been holding back passes you by, everything levels out. So we breathe into that space, that place that is courage, our capacity for strength, our capacity to be steadfast, and what it is that we are steadfast as are our beautiful principles. one power, one presence, one life. Nothing outside of it, no exceptions. Just breathe into the fact that you're not an exception. The principle of love, the principle of strength, the principle of beauty, the principle of joy, the principle of connection. Just allowing that to open the gates of your heart. Allowing the walls to come down. And allowing yourself to truly just be with whatever is arising, knowing that there is this amazing raft of love that is buoying you through whatever may feel like tumultuous waters. So let's just take that into our time of silence.